Hey guys, I wanted to make a tutorial that just shows the basics on using ibisPaint X for drawing. It's the app that I uh, prefer and always recommend to other people, but I do know that when you first open this app and are trying to figure it out, it does seem a little bit overwhelming at first. So I just wanted to run through the basics so that you can get started on the right foot without being so overwhelmed. When you first open the app, this is where you're going to be, and the only one I ever use is my gallery. And in here, any project that you have done, it will save in here. So when you let's say you want to go back to a project you were previously working on, you would just select it and then at the top click edit, and then it'll pick up where you left off. Or you can go back and to start a new project, at the top you're going to hit that little plus sign, and now here you can choose all these different sizes. I just always choose HD size just because it's going to be a better resolution, better quality. So now here we are with a blank canvas. So I just want to run through the different tools on the just starting from the beginning. On the bottom left, this little tool here, all that does is switches back and forth between your brush and your eraser. So instead of having to manually go in and switch back and forth, it's just a quick back and forth to make life much easier. And next to that is your little brush, and this is where all of your main tools are going to be. Let's go ahead and I'm going to open a photo just so we can work with that. Down here on the bottom right, where the little boxes are with the number 1, that's your layers function. When you open that, go over to the left and you see the little camera. That is where you import your photo. And you can go back and look at all of your albums. Let's say Facebook. Okay, so once you've selected your photo, you're going to want to size it before you click save. If you leave it small, that means you have to draw really small and your quality is going to severely suffer. So you want to, at this stage, get your photo as large as you can without cutting off. If you need to rotate the photo, you can select this little circle with the arrow, and then you can twist or turn it. Otherwise, it's going to stay stationary, and you can just make it larger or smaller. So once you've gotten it where you want it, you're just going to select that green check mark. Alright, and so your photo, you always want it to be your very bottom layer. So these 3 little lines to the right, if you click on that, you can drag your layer. So we're going to drag it down to the bottom. That layer you do not ever want to draw on. So you're always going to go a layer above it. That way, if you make a mistake, like if you start drawing on your photo layer and then you go to erase, you're going to be actually erasing your photo. So make sure you always go to the next layer up. So just to go through the different functions under this screen, the little plus is where you would add a new layer. The one next to that, the little box with the plus, is where you can add a folder, duplicate layer, or add a layer from canvas. The only one I ever use from that is duplicate layer. So let's say I'm going to select my image layer and then duplicate layer. So it's literally exactly what it sounds like. Next to that is the camera where you import. Next to that is where you can flip your photo, and same thing next to that. And then that right hand column, that is invert, and below that is going to be transform, which is going to allow you to move that image around again if you need to. Make it smaller, larger. You don't want to do that once you've already started drawing, but if you have not started drawing and you still need to move it, you can do so. Below that, again, flip, trash can for delete, and then those three little dots, you can rename layer is one that you'll often use, especially if you're pretty in-depth in a drawing and you have, sometimes I have drawings that have 20 or 30 layers. At that point you want to start definitely labeling your layers just to make it easier to navigate through them. So for this one I would say outline, select OK. And then down here, this little guy is for the opacity. So for your image layer, before you start drawing, it's easiest to bring your opacity down some so that when you do start drawing, you can actually see very clearly what you're doing. And the rest of the stuff there, we'll leave that for now because that's not really the basics. That's getting a little more in-depth. So we'll go back to this little toolbar over here. Transform, it's the same thing as the one we just saw where you can again resize that image. Let's see. You can select brush or erase, or like I said, flip back and forth right there. You've got your blur here. You've got smudge. You've got your bucket to fill colors in. You can add text. You can add frame dividers, eyedropper, which you don't need that either. That's to just pick up a color, but all you have to do actually is just hold down on your image and you can just snatch up a color that way, so you don't actually have to go in and select eyedropper. If you select canvas, you can trim or change the size of your canvas, and then under settings you can go through and play with things to get it to your own preference. Magic wand and lasso I will go over here in a few minutes, and then also filter is an option there. So starting out next to the brush, you're going to select that, and this is where you choose what type of brush you're going to be using. They have so many choices. The ones that say add, you don't have access to those unless you pay for the app or watch an ad. But once you watch the ad, and they're usually really short, like 15 seconds, it opens up all of the brushes for 18 hours, so it's really cool. So there's nothing in here that you can't access, you just have to watch a short video. So I definitely recommend going through and just playing with all these different brushes, figure out which ones are your favorite. Once you do kind of get an idea of which ones you like the best, you can select that plus and it'll add it to your custom list. So most of my favorites are already under here. Dip pen Soft is my like main go-to for, especially for outlining. Over to the right, you can play with the settings of that brush. So once I've selected my brush, I'm going to exit out of that. Right here is going to be the size of the brush. So there's small and then large. You got your back button over here. So undo or redo. Right here is your color. So you can open that up and manually choose a color, or you can, like I said, hold down for a second. That little color wheel pops up. You can drag it around and pick up your color. This just drops the toolbar out of the screen. So again, that's your size. This one over here is opacity. So you can see that it's low opacity right now, so it's like translucent, and you can keep layering that. You definitely don't want to, for your base color of a drawing, you definitely want your opacity set to 100, because you don't want to be able to see through it. But once you get to the stage where you're like blending and shading, then definitely that opacity toolbar comes in handy. So now, excuse me, top right, the different tools up here. I don't really do too much with this one. It's just the selection tool. We'll leave that alone for now. The one next to it, I definitely use. First thing on here is stabilizer. I always keep that up to 10. It just gives you a smoother line. So if you have shaky lines, that's definitely a helpful tool. And then I almost always, especially for outlining, use the force fade. So I would turn that on. I'll show you in just a second what that does. Basically, it's going to give you a tapered line, and you can choose like how sharp your taper is at the beginning and the end of your line with these little toolbars here. And then you can choose the shape of that fade or that taper. So these little eyeballs next to your layer, if you select it, it just will close that layer. It doesn't get rid of it, but it just allows you to get rid of, or just close it down for the time being. So I'm going to show you some differences here. So let's say we don't have stabilizer on, we don't have force fade on, and I'm just going to draw a straight line. So that's a little bit shaky. So I'm going to turn on my stabilizer so you can see that's much straighter. Now I'm going to turn that back off and turn on force fade. We'll go to like 40%. So this is without stabilizer, but force fade is on. So still a little bit shaky, but you can see how the lines are tapered. Now with stabilizer on and force fade on, you can see how much cleaner that looks. And then the lower you go, the less drastic your tapers are going to be. And then the higher, obviously, they're going to be much thinner. So, and you don't have to keep them the same. For example, when I'm doing eyelashes, I'll do a short, a lower one at the start and a higher one at the end. So let's say I'm drawing some eyelashes. So you can see how that is helpful. Same thing with like eyebrows. Just get rid of all that. And let's see, you can also, the method for real time or after, I mean, that's kind of pointless. It just shows you the taper while you're drawing, or as soon as you lift your pen, it applies it at that point. So I always just do it in real time. And then your drawing tool, you can select which one you want. So you can use it to draw a line. You can use it to draw a square. You can, if you're choosing a shape, you can select fill. So when you draw that square, it's going to actually fill it in as well. And it shows you right here your fill color. So and so all these different shapes you can use. And if you're finished with it, you have to actually go in and click off. And then right next to that is your ruler. This comes in handy quite a bit. The first one, of course, is just your regular straight ruler. It doesn't matter where this is on the screen. It doesn't matter what direction you draw in. It's only going to do lines, you know, going in that direction. And to change direction, you just grab one of the circles on the end of the ruler. If you look up top, it shows you actually what, you know, degree you're at. So 90 degrees right there. So now you can draw perfect straight lines going up and down. If you want to do it at an angle, same thing. You can even do it with your eraser. So if you wanted to, you know, erase something and get a very clean line, you could use the ruler. And again, to turn that off, you have to actually go in and click off. And you also have the circle one here. So you can draw anywhere on the screen. You can make the circle ruler large or small, but it doesn't matter. You can, like I said, draw anywhere. It's just going to be based around this red target. And same thing, you've got some other different size rulers there. You have to actually click off. And then you've got your symmetry ruler. Which allows you, like, if whatever you draw in one section is going to show up in all sections. So you can get some really cool designs doing that. Or you can draw like mandala type drawings, which are pretty fun. I'm going to go in and click off on that. And up there, that just pulls up some other patterns. I don't really ever use that either. So just to get started, excuse me, I'm going to open the visibility on my image again. Again, make sure you're always on the layer above that. And then I would just start sketching out. This is where you would want to play again with the side or the degree of your force fade or taper. This right here is a good time to use the circle ruler. If you click on the middle, that's where you can drag it. So try to center that up. Okay, so then I would so there we go. Got my basic outline for the eye. One of the other things I really like about ibis is that you can rotate your drawing. Some of the other apps don't allow you to do that, which is kind of frustrating. So I'm not being too meticulous right now, just wanting to give you guys an idea. If you're having trouble seeing, you can bring the opacity back up a little. I actually like to sometimes draw thicker lines in certain places just to give more effect. Just depends on what style you're going for. And so you can go in again and close the visibility for your image to get a look at your drawing so far. So open that back up and continue sketching. Okay, so I've got just a basic outline here. I would typically continue on and basically get an outline for the entire image, but just to move on to get to some other main points. Now, when you are finished with your outline, you would add a new, so you would be at this point, you would need to add a new layer. Your outline then needs to be moved to the top. Your outline needs to always be the very top layer. At this point, you would select the layer beneath that to start coloring. You can open that back up. And for coloring, you want to turn your force fade off. Stabilizer can stay on. And then you would hold down to grab a color. Right here on the right side, you can tell that's really where the light is hitting, so I don't feel like that's an accurate color, so I would maybe choose like down here where there's not like a whole lot of shadow but also not a whole lot of highlight. At this point you're just doing a base color, so you would start just coloring in your base. So you're going to go back in later to add the highlights and shadows. And really all you would need to do at this point is just trace the outline. It doesn't have to be perfect because you can go back in with the eraser and clean it up. Now, you would close your image and select your bucket, and that's just going to fill it in for you. You would have to, it leaves this weird white line, so you do have to go back in and fill that with your paintbrush. And you don't worry about it being in the eyes or the lips or anything, because you're going to go back in a different layer to color those places. So we have our base color there, so then I would open the image again, and now I'm going to add another layer. I'm going to close that base color, and then I would start adding the base color for the eyes. So right here actually would be a good place to use a lower opacity just to kind of blend this little area here. Bring that down a little. I'll select that middle neutral color just to blend that a little better. And then you want to bring that back up. If you try to do the bucket fill while the image is still open, it will do it based on the image. It won't fill it fully. It does, let me show you an example. See, it tries to fill it and leave those white spots. That's why I always say close that image before trying to fill the color in. So then you can close that, open your base color just to get a look at where you are so far. And then go back in to add some base color for the lips. Excuse my dogs, they're snoring right beside me. Okay, so you would just keep working it and just lay a base color down for the entire image, and then you would add another layer above those to start adding in shading and highlighting, details to the eyes and things like that. So yeah, pretty much every single thing you do though should be on its own layer, and it's easiest to rename them as you go so you don't get them mixed up. So for here I would say like eyes, lips, base. Skin, base. And then shading. Even could add another layer right here and call it close, base. And then I would color my shirt. Alright, so once you've reached a stopping point, this little arrow on the bottom right, you would select. And I don't know why it only gives you those save options from this screen to only save it as a transparent copy. But I always just go back to gallery, and from here you can save it. The three little dots up top, select that and save photo as a JPEG. Or you can duplicate your entire project, or you can save it as a PNG, which is the transparent background, or you can save the movie, meaning if you select that little play icon, it will show you everything that you've done for that project, like a time-lapse version. And so when it says save movie, that is what you would be saving, and you can also pick which speed you want it to save at. So it can be like super hyperlapsed, or a little bit slower. Also, you can share it from here. And if you want to go back in and continue working, you would click edit. So then I would go back, and there are all of my other projects. Go back in, click edit, continue working on it.